Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, and got a fairly jam-packed little show here today. I've got a conversation with Beanie Wells, former Ohio State star running back, went on to the NFL, and is now plying his trade as a commentator for CBS, the CBS college football offerings that'll be getting underway in the fall. I caught up with him via Zoom at the Troy Smith, the first Troy Smith golf outing, which is raising a lot of money the way I understand it, and good for them, good for the former Buckeyes or former Ohio State football players. They're always Buckeyes who show up for such events and do a lot for charity in and around the Central Ohio area and in and around the state. So good luck to them. Congratulations to them. And then I've got another conversation with Andy Staples of On3.com, a commentator, world-renowned commentator, as I like to call him. But Andy Staples and I talked a couple of weeks ago at the Big Ten meetings, pretty much about what's coming this fall in the new look Big Ten. Can you believe it? 18 teams. But we also spoke for quite a while on Ohio State, the expectations for this season. They're sky high and realistically so. So, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Beanie Wells. Beanie Wells, can a two running back system work for Ohio State football this fall? What's your take, Beanie?
Well, I think so. When you look at, who we have at the running back position, Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson, those are two dynamic guys. I think it has to work. We got a veteran quarterback, but he's new to Ohio State. I think you want to take some of that pressure off him by, running the ball a lot when you got two dynamic guys like that can hit a home run, that can grind it out. I think you certainly want to do that. So it can work, indeed.
How much is it going to be helped by the fact that Will Howard, if in fact he's the starter, we expect him to be the starter, be named the starter, maybe even this week, but we'll see. Devin Brown also can run, but how much does having that running quarterback element add to the effectiveness for those two running backs?
It's huge because you're not just going to rely on them. You have a quarterback that can pull it down and can run it and get you yards. So it keeps the defense honest. And that's something that we really didn't have the luxury of having the last couple of years, is a guy that defenses knew we're just going to run the ball consistently.
Yeah.
And when you do have that threat, it does something completely different. It's a whole nother dynamic to the offense. And, I think it'd be incredible for us this year.
Hey, you're working for CBS, man. You're an analyst. I think you run into Rick Neuheisel, et cetera, coming up this fall. But how excited are you? How excited are you about this Ohio State football team?
I'm so excited, man. I venture to say this is probably the most loaded team, top to bottom, with talent that I can remember in recent years at Ohio State. When you look at what Ohio State went out and did with the coaching staff, going out and getting guys by the name of Chip Kelly. Just adding pieces everywhere from the player perspective. Caleb Downs, Quinshawn Judkins, Will Howard. When you add those type of pieces, those guys that were already good in college football, and you bring them all on one team with great coaching, I think the sky is the limit for the Buckeyes this year, and I think they'll be very, very good. If they don't make a national championship, I think it'll be a little bit of a disappointment for everybody.
Hey, real quick, what does Chip Kelly add to this running? Obviously Chip Kelly teams have been effective running the ball everywhere he's ever been. Mm-hmm. He's almost a guru when it comes to running the ball in an era when everybody thinks gurus are all for passing offenses. But what have you seen that he just kind of brings to the fore more than anything, just emphasizing it?
Oh, 100%. He brings a high-tempo offense. And, his offenses exploit lanes and defenses. And, when he has running backs and his running games on his football team, they're always dynamic. They always go out and, seem to just rip off big run after big run because of the way he schemes defenses and he schemes plays for his players. And I think he's one of the best coaches in tailoring offenses towards his talent in college football. When you go back and you look at recent years at his teams at Oregon, at UCLA, those were some high-octane offenses with a lot of different players. And the players maybe weren't all world-type guys, but, when they got in that Chip Kelly system, he was able to bring the best out of them.
Yeah. Now, go back to the two running back deal and then throw James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon in there, too, because they're both going to play some, especially early, as they get through those early games, get their feet wet. Back to the two running back system. How does it really work from an ego standpoint?
But I certainly think you got to put your ego aside. That you have to do, you what's in the greater good of the team. But I think it's a little bit different this day and age too. Back when I was playing, I needed 20 to 25 carries because I needed to get going.
Yeah.
And now I think guys look at it from a different perspective. They more so want to have longevity, so they understand that what I can divvy up these carries in college, and I can still be productive. I'm still gonna get my touches. Um, and I don't have to, shoulder the whole load, so it's not going to be all on me. I think it certainly can work. I don't see a situation where we run into a guys having egos. I don't think Travion certainly won't have it because he's kind of been in that situation the last couple of years at Ohio State where he's kind of split duties. Now would it be a little bit more with Quinshawn, but I think it certainly can work, and guys will put those egos to the side for the greater good of the team and a chance to be the national championship.
Yeah, I was going to say Quinshawn's had over 540, 550 carries over the last two
Right.
seasons. That's a lot of tread off the tire, isn't it? I mean, he's probably looking
Too much.
for this, right? Go ahead.
Oh, 100%. It's too much. I mean,
Yeah.
500 and some odd carries in 2 years, that's a lot of carries at the college level. So him going to a place where he can still be productive, he's still going to get all the notoriety in the world, and he doesn't have to shoulder the load, and he can still be up for those national awards. I mean, people now we're looking at production opposed to just numbers.
Yeah.
When you watch Marvin Harrison Jr. be in the top 4 for the Heisman, and his numbers wasn't overly gaudy, but his production was so efficient that you had to put him in those conversations.
Yeah, and he had a highlight tape. I mean, the highlight tape's what
Right.
sets it off. Like Beanie Wells going for whatever 80 against LSU. I won't bring up any of that. Hey, last thing, does this team have the wherewithal? I mean, you think about it, Beanie. These guys could play 16, maybe even 17 games to win a national championship. Is that crazy to ask of college football players to play that kind of season, a roster like, you know what I mean? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it is now. When you look at the landscape of college football, you see guys getting paid. I think that definitely eases the load a little bit in terms of playing those extra games. But I think it makes it fun, and I think coupled with the transfer portal, coupled with everything, the NIL, I think it makes for a much better on-field product. You got obviously guys that have been in college a little bit younger or a little bit longer, and then you have guys being paid. These guys are incentivized a little bit more than they would be in years past. So I don't think it's much to ask at all.
All right. Last thing. You're at the Troy Smith golf tournament, celebrity golf tournament. Is it amazing to you still how Buckeyes can, can muster together for the common good? I mean, it's kind of interesting, isn't it, how you guys show up for stuff?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's crazy that, people still ask me to show up for stuff after so many years of not playing football. But it's amazing, when you got guys like Troy who are always trying to give back. And, anytime somebody's trying to give back, I think that brotherhood bands together and always wants to lend a hand and help. So I think it's one of the greatest, relationships to have. It's brothers, and our brothers from another mother. And, when you're in those trenches together, being in the locker room, no matter the sport, you guys all feel that commonality, that brotherhood.
Hey, before we go, you're speaking actually from the Troy Smith golf tournament right now. You're about to tee off. I wanted to ask you one last thing. Where can people find you this fall, man? What are you going to be doing for CBS?
So, yeah, I'll be on CBS Sports Network, and I'll be on CBS covering college football, and I'll be in CBS HQ. So all CBS, aspects and outlets, I'll be there.
I gotcha. Hey, Beanie Wells, once again, thanks for joining the Tim May Show, my man.
No problem at all.
Always enjoy catching up with Beanie, man. He's one of my favorite players ever at Ohio State, mainly because of his mom, because I went up to Akron when he first committed to Ohio State and did a little kind of deep interview with him and his mom and his family. Was stunned by the number of shoes in Beanie's closet that day. Also, I was working for the Dispatch then, and our press car broke down on the outskirts of Akron. That was fun for me and my photographer that day on a very cold day in the winter. But I always enjoy catching up with Beanie. Wish him best of luck in his endeavors with CBS. Now let's get my conversation with Andy Staples, a guy I've known for a while, but he's been a longtime commentator on the college football scene, college sports scene in general, but definitely in particular the college football scene. And like I said, we talk about a lot of things in regards to the Big Ten future from here on with 18 teams. Who knows, maybe more down the road. But also we talk a lot about the great expectations for Ohio State this coming season, that they are, in fact, realistic. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Andy Staples. Andy Staples, thanks for joining the Tim May Show.
I'm happy to be here, Tim.
I know, I've had you on at least once in your tenure with On3.com. I'd like to promote the brands, but I wanted to ask you this. Your take on the Big Ten. We're sitting over here in the midst of the Big Ten media days. This is airing a few days later. What is just it's kind of the same old, except you're mixing in the best of the Big 12 too, right? I mean, there's kind of a strange cocktail.
Yeah, I mean, the top of the Pac-12 from last year, the two teams that played in the Pac-12 championship game, like they're both going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
At the Big Ten media days.
Yes.
It's very weird, but the Big Ten needed that. The Big Ten needed some more beef at the top. There's too much distance between the top and the bottom in the Big Ten, and so now you have some, Oregon, Washington, obviously rebuilding after going to the national title game, but then losing their coach. But they'll be fine. They'll build it back up. They'll be able to compete with the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Penn States right off the bat, and that's exciting. And USC theoretically should be able to do that. We'll see if they do.
Yeah. There's a fellow out there who has called the Mouth of the South. He's basically saying this is a make or break year for Lincoln Riley.
Jimmy Hart? Jimmy Hart's saying that?
No, not Jimmy Hart. Is Jimmy Hart the Mouth of the South? This must be
he was definitely the Mouth.
This must be Mouth of the South too.
Jimmy Hart and Paul Feinbaum do have the same kind of build, so but Jimmy's got much better hair.
Gotcha.
But, no, I don't know if it's make or break for Lincoln Riley.
I mean, it's just his third year.
They're paying him an awful lot of money.
Yes.
And they would owe him an awful lot of money. But he does need to show that he can run a more holistic program where the defense is catered to and cared for, and allowed to hit during practice as the year goes on, so that by the end of the year they still know how to tackle. These are all things that need to happen. But they also need to recruit better defensively.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jeff Schwartz about this. Former Oregon offensive lineman, played in the NFL for a long time. His thing is they just need good big bodies, and they haven't had that at USC on either side of the line of scrimmage. Now, I see the Jonah Monheim podium over here. That's a good big body. That's their center. He's great. He's going to be an NFL player. But the Pete Carroll USC teams, they had 5 NFL offensive linemen, 4 NFL defensive linemen, and then those guys' backups were also probably going to the NFL.
Yeah.
That's not what USC's been either under Clay Helton or under Lincoln Riley. And so they've got to get back to that. And it's interesting because, you look at this class of 2025 recruiting cycle, they had a little hot streak of commits of very sought-after defensive linemen. They've all flipped.
Yeah.
They've all decided to go somewhere else. So you kind of wonder, when's that going to start? But it might be that they need some proof of concept. So Dantlin comes in as their defensive coordinator this year, and we will see if they play better defensively, and then maybe that start. But the problem is, at that point, now you're on to the class of 2026. When do the bodies start getting there? So it's a tougher situation for Lincoln Riley than I think most people realize, and this league is going to be very tough because you do play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon this year, but they'll play Oregon in coming years, and those teams have lots of beef up front. They've been recruiting well for years on the line of scrimmage. Penn State too, Michigan obviously.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get used to that.
Yeah. But I was going to interject a smart aleck remark in there.
You should always do that.
When has Lincoln Riley ever been known for having a great defense?
Never.
Wherever.
Never.
Yeah.
And you thought, okay, was it because he got saddled with Mike Stoops because Bob retired?
Right.
But I think he waited too late on that one. He hires Alex Grinch. That wasn't working out. He kept him too long. And so, maybe they get it right this time.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I want to lead into, though, Andy. Do you feel like we're into an era of not waiting too long for athletic directors or schools to pull the trigger on something that's not immediately working? You're talking about from a head coaching standpoint.
Nobody's patient anymore, and I would argue, because I live in Gainesville, Florida, so there's a lot of debate over that, because Florida keeps pulling the plug on these guys.
Yeah.
And there's a faction that says, well, you got to wait, you got to give them time. I'm not sure you do. like the best coaches kind of reveal themselves in by year 2 or year 3.
Yeah.
Like think about Urban Meyer when he got to Florida or to Ohio State. Like you knew by year 2 exactly what you were dealing with. Kirby Smart getting to Georgia. You know by year 2 exactly what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Like it does present itself. And you say, oh, well, what about Dabo? Dabo took over a little bit different situation and was an interim coach and had to fire some coordinators and get things going. But like for the most part, year 2, maybe going into year 3, exactly what you're dealing with.
I asked Ryan Day at the end of the little press conference we had with him here, isn't it kind of stunning how quickly things have flipped? I mean, we were sitting here 3 years ago. Oh my God, what's coming around the
Jim
corner?
Harbaugh said we're going to beat them or die trying, and everybody's like, ha ha, you're never going to beat them.
But I'm talking about just that's a good one too, because everything flipped at the same time for Ohio State. But I'm talking about going into the NIL transfer portal era. It was a mega storm here 3 years ago. How are they going to handle it, whatever? And it seems like the ones that have gotten it have really gotten it, right? But that was to be expected, right? I mean, some teams jumped on it and said...
I think it's interesting because there have been some teams that have done really well that have managed to turn their fortunes around. Like Florida State was in a bad spot.
Yes.
Post Willie Taggart, post Jimbo Fisher, Mike Norvell used the transfer portal to get them out much quicker than he would have been able to otherwise.
Yeah.
Ole Miss completely flipped the way it builds its roster, turned into one of the better teams in the SEC. Missouri, I mean, they had people in their legislature helping them craft laws so that they had an NIL advantage. And look at the way they're recruiting now. They almost never lose a good in-state player.
Right. I mean, it's crazy. And Ohio State, is known for its NIL influence, etc. But
well, it took them a minute.
Exactly.
And they've got it now.
Yeah, that's why I said everybody started rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yeah.
And it's quite impressive once that happens, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it feels like Oregon and Tennessee were really ahead of the curve. Texas was ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing some of these other ones catch up. And when Alabama decided to catch up, they caught up quick. When Ohio State decided to catch up, they caught up quick. Michigan, I don't think they were really all in on it, but they were smart and realized retention is more important than acquisition and went hard on retention.
Yeah.
And it got them a national title.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes to my kind of like final couple of questions with you. Ohio State specifically, retention off the chart this year with the exception of Marvin Harrison Jr. And Michael Hall, he wanted to move on. But then they also have these guys bubbling up. You have a freshman class that's as good as almost anyone Ohio State's ever had.
And Caleb Downs.
And you got these transfers from Alabama and a guy from Ole Miss. I'm talking about Quinshon Judkins. This does seem like the perfect storm in terms of a team. How can you do this again next year?
No, you can't do it again next year.
Exactly.
Because you can't have what you can't have. No, you can go into the portal and get the best people available in the portal. But what you can't have is all of those guys who could be in NFL training camps right now say, you know what, we're going to come back for one more ride.
Right.
This is pretty much what happened with Michigan last year.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
It was a perfect storm for them last year. It's a perfect storm for Ohio State this year, and for a lot of the same reasons. Those Michigan players, they lost to TCU in the Fiesta Bowl, and they're like, well, crap, we should have been playing for the national title. Why don't we try this again? Yeah. And the Ohio State players, they lost to Michigan, and they're like, we don't want to be the class that goes out just losing to Michigan. We can't do that. Right. So it's very similar reasoning. The difference is, instead Michigan was very strategic in its portal, acquisitions last year, like Ladarius Henderson from Arizona State to play left tackle, which was a great one. But Caleb Downs, in terms of talent versus the rest of the portal, that's the best player in the portal. Yeah. Like, he changes everything about your defense if you want it to. And I'm excited to see what they do because, the idea of Sonny Styles as a linebacker with Caleb Downs back there, yikes. Yeah. It's going to be really good. That's what I was going to ask. So the realistic expectation is definitely make the playoff, right, for Ohio State? Whether you win the Big Ten or not, I mean, Okay, so here, give me your expectations. Let me turn it back on you. Yeah. Because I got asked this in my mailbag, and I tried to answer it as best I could, but I feel like someone who's covered Ohio State for as long as you have can give me a better answer for this. Yeah. So this is what one of the viewers wanted to know. It is, does Ohio State, for Ryan Day's sake, have to beat Michigan, and do they have to win the Big Ten? That's what they asked, and I was like, well, they have to beat Michigan. I don't think they have to win the Big Ten. Because, I would imagine most Ohio State fans are okay with beat Michigan, win the national title, and could care less if they win the Big Ten.
Yeah. I think you're right. But see, that's where I was talking about, to begin this. We're in a new era. I mean, there's a possibility, for example, of Ohio State going to Oregon, either winning or losing,
Right.
and then playing Oregon again right here on this field,
Yep.
and either winning or losing, and then playing Oregon again 4 weeks later in the quarterfinals.
Also possible.
All possible, which is a total different mix. Same thing with Michigan. If Michigan comes around, gets their quarterback playing well, etc., Michigan could play for the Big Ten title.
Yeah.
I'm not writing Michigan off by any stretch.
No.
And the Texas game is going to be a harbinger, but I don't know how big a harbinger.
Right, and
because it's so early in the year.
That could be the first of 2 Texas-Michigan games this year,
Exactly.
for all we know.
Exactly. So it's. I think 5 years from now we're going to be judging a lot of these programs differently than tradition says to judge them. But when a team is beating you 3 years in a row, it's imperative to kind of stop that run,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. This is, and it just means something different in this rivalry.
Yeah.
It is something that weighs on you. Everybody's got the countdown clocks. Like, it's been a long time. And now, not as long as it was for Michigan, but Ohio State, I don't think is, when you dominate for that long, every second of the drought feels like 10 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they have got to get that fixed because, from a national standpoint, it is really out of some spice. Because when they were just killing Michigan every year, it was boring.
Yeah.
This is not boring.
So you don't, in the new look, Major College Football, do you see rivalries diminishing, or do you see them in some ways being enhanced by what's at stake?
Well, I just, the pain of the loss might not be as painful because you may get to play them again sooner. I think that's the part. Well, I'll give you an example. Did you not care when Duke and North Carolina played in the Final Four? When it could have been, it wound up being Coach K's last game.
Right.
Like, I think that was their 3rd game that season. Could have been their 4th had they played in the ACC tournament. And did it not mean anything?
Right.
So it looked pretty meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So I think we're just going to have to get used to seeing these rivalries on different terms, maybe sometimes in different stadiums, because it's a national championship game or it's a conference championship game. But I think they're still going to be very, very meaningful.
Andy, thanks for joining the Tim May Show again, my man.
My pleasure.